We vote, we are
live.
They're good with it.
We're live.
They're good with it.
Senate Appropriations, March
Yes.
7th.
They
We're
are
going
totally
through,
good with it.
we're trying to go through budget for presentations for fiscal year 27. We have the Agency of Education. We have the Commissioner with us today, so I'll let you introduce yourself and your team and give us your presentation. We can take down this silly.
Who did that?
I don't know.
It was,
Like your project.
yeah.
Centerpiece,
Right.
actually.
This is
on
what
tape.
education is all about.
I love it.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Zoe Saunders, Secretary of Education.
Jill Biggs Campbell, Deputy Secretary and Chief of Operations.
Sean Cusino, the Deputy CFO. Hey.
Welcome.
We're pleased to be here this afternoon. We know we had to make some scheduling adjustments, so just want to be straightforward around our time constraints today. So I will be with your committee for 30 minutes. Jill is able to stay another 15, and then Sean will be staying behind and can provide a deeper dive into the budget upon your needs. We have with us, we intended to propose our full budget. We have shared with you our budget book, which goes into great detail around how we're making strategic choices around aligning our resources in the areas that are most impactful to elevating educational outcomes statewide. We also have provided or put together a response to the House budget. And so would like your kind of direction on where you would like us to start. We can begin by providing an overview of our House response or with our budget. So I wanted to defer to you on what
Well, if there's one part that you feel like is better to be delivered by you as the commissioner, you can start there.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll start there then, and that'd be helpful. So the House budget, there are significant concerns that we have with the amendments made from the governor's original proposal.
Is this one of your handouts or is it just?
I believe that this was
Yeah, so
provided.
this should be the testimony that says fiscal year 2027 budget H 951. We sent you over a lot of material, so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Okay.
And you might reference it as well with, we sent over materials that we had provided to House Appropriations on March 10th, which was an update on the use of our Act 73 appropriation to date as of March 10th. So there's sort of a cross-reference happening there.
Okay.
I think it's important to have a bit of a context around the work that we've been doing within the Agency of Education. We have undergone a significant reorganization to ensure that we are aligning our expertise and teams and projects in ways that will add the most value to the field. And we have focused on establishing our strategic plan, which has 5 strategic pillars. Those pillars are aligning our efforts to improve academic outcomes, expand pathways to post-secondary success, and support safe and healthy learning environments for all schools. We do appreciate that within the House budget, they have included a provision to move our limited service positions that were requested last year into 5 permanent positions. Those are positions that were put forward as part of our education transformation request and are also the teams really building back the agency's field-facing capacity to provide that level of support around operational and academic efforts. However, there are a number of provisions within the current House budget draft which will complicate the agency's ability to lead and carry out the work that the state is expecting us to deliver upon. So just to make a finer point on it, last session, we brought forward to you a budget transformation proposal. Within that proposal, we detailed all of the ways that the agency would be using those dollars to guide the change management process that is required for the transformation. All of that was approved, and we have been working towards implementing all of those practices. The current House proposal actually takes those funds away and really takes away our ability to deliver on that progress. It's challenging because in the agency we have been navigating a lot of federal uncertainty, and so some of the shifts we're seeing in the current House budget proposal feel very reminiscent to when our ESSER dollars were taken away during the Trump administration. That was very destabilizing and created a lot of challenge for us to have continuity around the strategic priorities that were established. And particularly, we have a lot of concern that the Reversion funds for literacy are not included in the House budget. Act 139 was established as the most comprehensive literacy improvement effort that we've had in Vermont. It did not come with an appropriation. And so what we have done as an agency is look and be really resourceful in identifying funds that are currently available to us, but actually realigning the use of those funds to literacy because of its prioritization. So it is disappointing that the literacy funds, which were requested $700,000, are not included in the House budget. And it's important to note that those don't represent new money. It's really a reversion to better align resources of the agency to promote statewide improvement.
And other context, so you all actually heard from us on this. We had it originally with the EAA request. You were quite supportive of it, which we really appreciated. House Appropriations received that same testimony. They declined to include it in the EAA, and we want to thank you for doing so. And as I signaled back then, well, we'll come back to you for the FY27 budget. This was in the governor's request. And, you know, so if you have, I submitted that testimony again, so you had sort of a reminder of the long history of those funds. But what is sort of critical to remind us of is that these are not new dollars. And in fact, originally they were federal dollars. So we were asking for a simple revision and reappropriation. Absent those funds, I just want to be clear about the risk. We will not be able to carry out the really critical work that the agency has been tasked to do to support teachers, classroom teachers, in improving their literacy instruction. So that is the consequence of not having those dollars. There are no other dollars. We're really using, as Sean and I like to say, we're finding every penny right now to really maximize our support for the field and our strategic work. So the risk is quite high. We will have to not move forward next year.
So their budget transfers out that 700,000 as well as other unobligated or unspent funds from Act 73.
It doesn't even include the reversion at all. So those funds would just go back into the general fund pot, right, Sean? Because they were carried forward dollars, so we asked for.
They take them, spend them somewhere
Yeah,
else.
and then in addition, they take, we had originally asked for just over $4 million to support ed transformation. That was further reduced in the budget last year to just about $2.8 million. That included the 5 limited service positions,
Right.
which we've asked to be made permanent. They further reduced that down and leave us with $800,000.
Mainly what they took was money that was unobligated. Is that what they did? Like, I can look at it later.
Yeah, I mean, we have obligated some of these funds. We have live RFPs. I mean, we are a year into this work. So it is a really disruptive action on their part. And what they're suggesting to do with it is to grant the funds to districts for administrative costs related to education transformation.
And you, the document you referred to earlier that you gave to the House, that explains all this Act 73.
Yeah, where we are with
where
all of
you are.
it. And you can see the way
It's like
that
a
we've
table in
been
there, yeah.
grading funds to maximize the work. So as I said, we're trying to be as resourceful as possible. We're pulling every funding source that I've got, general funds and federal dollars, some of the Act 73 transformation dollars to be able to elevate these major strategic initiatives that we're required to undertake.
And this memo to the House committee was from February 24th, about a month ago. Is a bit basically the same, no big changes to this table. And,
No, the dashboard RFP is live.
okay. And so was Act 73 4 or 5 positions? That's what they authorized?
Act 73 is 5 positions.
And all of
They
them
were
have been
limited
hired?
service for 8 months.
Have they all been hired?
No, it's very challenging to recruit for a position
8
that is
months
only
positions.
8 months. So as we're recruiting people to leave the field and leave their district jobs, that's a very high risk for them unless they can have guarantee and assurance that that will be a more permanent
Have you
role.
been able to fill any of the 5?
I have one that I'm in the process of onboarding, and I mean, just to be very frank, we were incredibly lucky to get her. She's coming from the field and is exactly the person I would have wanted to hire, taking a very big risk on us.
And those that are in the interview process are kind of waiting for a signal around more
Yeah,
permanent.
so to be clear, we started recruiting these positions it's way back in the winter, and it's.
So that's one of the reasons you want to switch to permanent.
Yes, absolutely. And typically with the limited service positions, they do 3 years, so
Yeah.
people can plan for that. 8 months is quite challenging these are very senior level roles. So they're high level leadership positions. To take that level of risk for a short time is really not reasonable. So that's one of the reasons, is to be able to really fulfill the recruitment. But also, we have always seen these roles as instrumental to supporting education and district quality. And we've long heard criticism based on what happened in the downsizing of the agency years ago during the recession, that many of the roles that were reduced were those field-facing roles. So this team helps to build back out the field-facing support that we can provide to our districts. And then as part of our reorganization and strategic plan, we're having more emphasis on our team members being more embedded in the field. So this really does signal an alignment with our direction as an agency and being responsive to the field.
And was there also one for permanent position for special education?
Yes,
Has that been filled?
we are in the final process.
Okay.
We're
We're in the salary negotiations.
'Cause that's also like a senior position.
That is very much so, yes. And in addition to, so there's, I think, 2 things that are occurring in the House budget. One is diverting dollars that were originally appropriated to the agency into grants for the districts. And then there's also provisions that provide restrictions on how we're able to use the funds that are appropriated to the agency. And many of those restrictions are problematic for us to be able to deliver on the leadership responsibilities. So we are going to have further conversation with the House to understand that, but for your benefit within this testimony, we do have a table for each of those line items and identify where we have opposition to those amendments and why. And so if I can orient you to that, I can walk you through some of those areas. In terms of there's some restrictions on us being able to do.
This is the table where you have the budget section.
That's correct.
I think, okay.
Yeah. So related to the education transformation, as we've expressed, we do oppose withholding and restricting funds in fiscal year 26. Those have already been approved and appropriated by the legislature. Specifically, this work, we have some concerns around the underlying policy choices around the shift in funds. We'll be presenting to House Education after this meeting to really elaborate on that. We also recognize that within this, there are some restrictions on our ability to do data visualizations and dashboards, which is challenging because we've long heard that we need to have greater transparency around our data, and that is going to be a critical factor for the districts to support continuous improvement and for the transformation efforts. And I think I'm going to kind of have a couple other areas. I think those are the main ones that I wanted to make sure. And then we've talked about the literacy piece being a challenge because that is an interruption in our ability to deliver on read per month.
How much money is that in that section? Section C103. Is this, you have the total, or is it just part of the restrictions is also a big part of it? It's not just the
both the restrictions are on those dollars not being appropriated to the agency, but more through grants to the district. And then we have opposition to many of the terms around the use of those funds. Sean, do you want to expand on the actual dollars that are
it looks like
diverted?
1.4 million.
Okay. We'll learn more about that as we go through the House budget.
Great.
We haven't really looked at that yet. And understood on the 700,000 for the literacy. I do remember that.
Good, I'm glad. I did warn you that we'd be back to talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I think it felt like a pretty simple ask, particularly since it wasn't new funds, so it was surprising to see that omission. And we are really making progress on this despite the starts and stops from the kind of reversal of federal dollars. So, being able to ensure the field that they're going to get some continuity in the way that this is rolled out is really important. And again, just that risk is that there are no other funds available for it. We are already bringing in federal dollars that we have at the state level. We're already reverting FY26 funds, you know, that we were able to do without needing kind of full reversion permission because it was already within our, what is it called, the DAB?
Yeah.
I never know what the DAB stands for. I just call it the DAB. So we're really bringing to bear every penny that we can in the absence of any appropriation for literacy work.
And while we're on just kind of general topics, are you worried about any further federal cuts or kind of anything on horizon that we should be aware of? Or?
I mean, at this point, our understanding is, you know, level funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
So their FY26 is what we use to fund our FY27.
Right.
So what that's saying to the field is that they can expect level funding from basically the budget that they're currently living. I think that the bigger concern is more about basically the dismantling of the Department of Education. We were just talking about the other day, we have a grant amendment to submit and we're hoping there's someone on the other line. You know, so it's that sort of level of uncertainty.
Lack of staff.
Lack of staff and then go ahead. So
Yeah, the strategy
goes in.
the strategy around dismantling the Department of Education is moving those areas under different agencies. So they have interagency agreements, which the Trump administration has really positioned as proof of concept. And they're now in the process of doing some additional interagency agreements. There's some contemplation around moving special education. Those movements have not yet been finalized, but are really significant. So the proof of concept that's often cited is the movement of the Perkins grant to the Department of Labor, but that's a much smaller amount of dollars. The movement of the title funding to other agencies is much more significant. And so we are really pressing upon, you know, our congressional delegation, you know, the importance of making those funds available as of July 1. And when we say available, not just that we get the grant award, but that we can draw down the dollars. And I was just in DC earlier in the week, and there's a lot of conversation as they're trying to move to a new system. There needs to be an evaluation of whether they'll be ready on the new system within these other departments to actually deliver on this obligation to the states on July 1. And there has to be a point in time, kind of like a go, no go, where if they're not able to deliver on the new system, that we would want to make sure they could use the existing systems to get us the dollar. So those are the conversations we were having with our congressional delegation in DC this week, is just making sure we're tracking that in terms of the access to the dollars and having visibility to the project management process that's happening at the Department of Education, so we can evaluate if there needs to be pressure put on those decisions of how the dollars will be distributed. And then there's also the question around training. The U.S. Department of Education is, from what I gather, in the process of doing a contract to provide training on these new finance systems. We don't yet have the details around that, but that's a lot of what the state chiefs are advocating for. This is a bipartisan issue, where states just need to make sure that they can access the dollars, that their accountants and their team have the training in order to be able to draw down those funds and distribute to the district. So that's more of what we're
and there's some really, what we're talking about is really mechanical kinds of things. So Sean, you got to experience this when they moved the Perkins grant over to DOL and having to get fully re-registered into a new system. There was significant delay and heartache and, you know.
Eventually it started working.
Yeah, but it was months, right? And it seemed like, you know, the folks at USN were not necessarily coordinating with the folks at the Department of Labor, and that then trickles down. So
we're also we're monitoring any new terms. So there could potentially be new terms which require a substantial more documentation on a frequent basis that it would be hard not just for Vermont, but many states to comply with. So those are the things that we're monitoring right now at the federal level. Right now, we're not anticipating cuts in funding. There is some indication that there might be an increase in IDEA funding, but we haven't yet received confirmation of that with the president's budget, but that was signaled to state chiefs earlier this week.
And I think, Senator, last year towards the end of session, I think we came in and gave kind of a final federal update. We can offer to do the same again, like before you all recess, this is where we think we're at, and we will let you know, joint fiscal committee, or e-board out of session.
Yeah, that might be, doesn't sound promising. But
Yeah, we're
the best we
moving-
can hope for is level funding and no other extra drama or turns or
That will be the best.
hiccups, yeah.
Yeah, we're managing through a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and because of that, the agency's identified the need for even stronger leadership, and that's why we focus so heavily on developing our strategic plan and being really clear around our priorities as a state. What you'll see in our budget book is everything, all the budget decisions, the contract negotiations, how our teams are organized, are aligned to these priorities and with the intent of providing that stability to the field. And so, when we aren't able to access dollars from the state that we thought we could access, becomes really challenging for us to deliver on our leadership responsibility. And so we're welcome the opportunity to talk more about that. We want to have full transparency in terms of how we're using the dollars. I want to also note that for all of the projects that we're implementing in the field, we have organized opportunities to get input from our field partners. So in our budget book, as you look at all of the initiatives that we're resourcing, those have been really co-designed and developed with input from the field. So as an example, as we're really rolling out a number of training to support the implementation of Act 173, which is really around improving quality of instruction and access to support for our students, we've engaged the field in thinking through how should we roll this out, what's the timing of this, how does it align with other training that we're doing so that we can add the most value and be impactful to our shared goals.
Okay. Does any other committee members have general questions before we move to the kind of more of the budget presentation? So, do you want to walk us through your
Yeah, so
presentation slides?
traditionally I speak on your behalf for the secretary's message, but you're here, so why don't you give kind of that brief slide, and we can probably let the secretary go so she can get to the next round of testimony today.
It's always awkward when you have my face on it and I have to. So you've seen our backup documentation. We really took the budgeting process, as we always do, with a concerted focus on how this is an expression of our priorities. This past year and a half has been really intensive work in lifting up the priorities for our state and ensuring that we could evaluate how we were using our resources at the state agency to support that. So it has resulted in, as I mentioned, really significant changes in how we are operating as an agency through our realignment of work. And also making sure that, we've really been resourceful how we can stretch our dollars. So you'll see in the budget book, there's a lot of initiatives that we were able to put forward without any new appropriations. And that's because we've been really thoughtful and also discerning in how we're organizing our time, our resources, and crafting our initiatives to make that impact. So we do have within our strategic plan, as I mentioned, we're organized by 5 pillars. Within those pillars, we have identified what we're calling accelerated initiatives. And that's important to note because while we're developing the long-range vision for education in our state, we know that we have to be responsive and agile to the emergent needs. And so what you'll see in our budget is a focus on resourcing those key initiatives now that we know are going to be critical to advancing and elevating those goals. Here's our policy initiatives for this year, which we're halfway through sessions, and you've seen them already.
Are these the accelerated?
These are like our key policy initiatives that we brought forward, and we can show you what the accelerated initiatives are. So, but Zoe, if you want to speak to these, what we brought forward in the state house.
So with the CTE transformation, this is really building upon our shared vision of expanding access to high quality career and technical education and ensuring that we can have earlier exposure in middle school. So the proposal that's brought forward is really about universal access to CTE and moving towards a single governance entity that will allow us to have more consistency in terms of quality and support for career and technical education with some intentional alignment to the work of the districts in creating that coherent instructional program so that career and technical education really becomes part of the way that we deliver education. Part of this is also modernizing our current rules and processes as well. Chronic absenteeism, as we've noted over the last several years, has been a challenge that all states have tackled with, particularly after the pandemic. There's been a rise in chronic absenteeism. 1 in 4 students experience chronic absenteeism. So
And how's that defined? So many days per
10%.
month? 10% of the days for the whole school year?
Yes, that's right.
So that averages out to about 2 days per month. But we have many students who are well above that, and they tend to be our most vulnerable populations. And Vermont has not recovered around chronic absenteeism to the extent that many other states have, and so this is why it's an area of concerted focus for us. We're still lingering at that 25%, and we have a lot of other states that, through really big statewide efforts, have been able to get back down to that like 8 to 10%, which is, you know, that's pretty good to be at that level.
And our policy is focused on clarity around definitional terms and also the process. Our efforts are also very much preventative and making sure that we can lift up some promising practices that other districts have done effectively to prevent that. So we know truancy is part of that, but that really is at the tail end. So we're creating a process that is really much more responsive to the needs of the students and also clarifying points of escalation for districts so that there's more consistency, because we have heard a lot of feedback from districts around there's a lack of clarity roles and responsibilities and when things need to be escalated. So this very much is an interdisciplinary approach to the work, and we've had partnership with other agencies in formulating this along with the field.
And the status of this bill is it passed out of House. It passed out of House Education unanimously, which was really fantastic. We were so pleased to see that kind of coalescing around the issue. And now it's over in the Senate. We look forward to providing, answering questions or providing testimony to Senate Education, but it did pass out of House with strong support. It's very foundational, right? As we're digging into doing the policies and procedures and best practices, first we have to have some good foundations and shared definitions to work from. So this is like step 1 of a multi-year strategic plan.
And beyond the statutory changes that are recommended, we're doing intensive partnership with the healthcare community as well, with UVM, and we've co-hosted trainings this year. So there's a lot of work that's happening within the field as well as some of these statutory changes. And then another key area of focus for us is finalizing the decisions around Act 73. We recognize that within Act 73, there were intentional decisions that needed to be made this session, and so we've continued to be supportive of sharing data, information, and research to help support and inform policymakers in finalizing those decisions so that we can really advance the goals of Act 73 and build an education system that truly is world-class and is overcoming what we currently see as an unfair system, which continues to have great disparity in terms of the access to opportunities across our state. So we're very much committed.
And that's actually where Secretary Saunders needs to go now, so.
Great segue.
I can jump over.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Sean, I'll jump over and then you'll get to be in the hot seat. All right, so Sean, if you want to advance. And so I take us to slide 14, and then I have to also leave, and Sean can take you down into the details.
Okay.
So our strategic pillars that we've been talking about, so this is our 3 to 5 year strategic plan. The agency has not had a strategic plan since 2014. So that's a really long time to go without sort of a clear North Star. And one of the very first things that Secretary Saunders did when she came in was ask for the strategic plan. We were, dusting off old things, and one of our first big all staffs, we did kind of a quick poll of the folks who were here. How many of you were involved in that strategic plan? And I think like 3 people raised their hands, and we said, okay, we're not doing that again. The next time we do this, everyone's going to be able to raise their hands. So we are in the we've done the environmental scan, right, which is sort of defining the problem, looking at all the data, putting out a lot of reporting, validating what we're hearing in the field. We've established these 5 pillars, And then within those, we're now in the sort of actual like breaking down and planning, defining the goal areas, what are going to be our key performance measures, what does success look like. And that work is being done through steering committees, which are largely made up of members of the field and other education leaders. So each of these pillars has its own strategic steering committee with about 20 to 25 people on it. We just finished our first round of meetings there. We'll be meeting all through the spring, and then our goal is to actually publish our strategic plan in July. At which point then we get into the implementation, the measuring, the evaluating, the adjusting, right? So then you get into that continuous improvement cycle. And this is how we've also aligned our FY27 budget. So having really clear priorities around what we're doing in a kind of resource limited environment that we're working in with. We run a very small agency, right? So we have a really limited number of people, so how do we best resource our work? So improving statewide academic performance, expanding college and career readiness, promoting safe and healthy schools, supporting operational effectiveness, and ensuring high quality special education services and differentiated support for all students. And you can, we can link to this. We've got a website for all the details on this. And then within that, Senator Bruce, to your point, we aren't sort of waiting for the plan to be done to actually start doing some accelerated initiatives that we know we need to get moving on. We've done almost all of these without any additional appropriations, and it's really being done by aligning the resources within the agency and having folks really focus on specific work. So you've already seen Read Vermont. This one, we do need some additional funds. That's what that $700,000 request is for. We also have a math pilot that we're tentatively branding Count on Vermont. If anyone has any pithy, and this might be a good area for you, any pithy, we've been workshopping. We tried Vermont counts, and I think there was a Vermont count, so we smacked right down. So yes, please send your ideas. But we're starting this very small with a few pilot districts because we know that literacy, math, and science are 3 of our foundational areas. And what we're really finding is when you get to the college and career readiness, what we're seeing is that students are not able to take advantage of dual enrollment and honors courses and AP courses and even CTE because they don't actually have the foundational skills in place to do so. And Senator, I bet you experience this in schools all the time, right? So it really becomes very rapidly an equity issue. All right, we also have Safe and Healthy Schools. So our Everyday Counts, that's our chronic absenteeism campaign. We're about 2 years into this work, and we're going to be really working once we get the statutory changes done, hopefully this session. We're already working on the model policy, procedures, best practices, and then really our aim is to turn this into a school issue. Chronic absenteeism is not a school issue, it's a community issue, and really thinking about how we expand this so that everybody kind of has ownership of the kiddos and ensuring that they're getting to school. We also are going to be really focused on HHB, hazing, harassment, and bullying prevention is a major area of focus. And as always, when you're talking to me, you're also going to be talking about school facilities and state aid for school construction, which we all know continues to be sort of the albatross that we've got to kind of figure out here. Operational effectiveness, we have one example here, but I would just say we're looking across almost every process that we have within the agency and looking for ways to document it, improve it, look at cross-training. Because we're such a small agency, we frequently have, you know, a person, right, who knows how to do that thing. So we really need to be cross-training so we reduce that operational risk that has been very typical of the agency for a really long time. And also looking at improving our data, reporting, the timeliness of data. We have to do this in partnership with the field. The field gives us the data, and so we have to ensure that the data that we're receiving is high quality, that we are able to turn it around in a timely manner, and then make meaning out of that data so that folks can use it for folks in this building, folks in schools, that the state agency can use it for strategic decision making. So this is an area that we've been really focused on for about the last 18 months or so, and will continue to be focused on. And then Act 73 and 173 implementation. So 173 was passed in 2018, and really due to, I would say, just a variety of confounding factors, including the pandemic, really the implementation never kind of got off the ground. And so we're going to do it. The best practices and the lessons from Act 173 have not changed. And so we are bringing to bear some additional funding resources where, again, it's not new funds. We're using some federal dollars. We're using some carry forward. We're using a whole variety of braided sources or resources to do trainings which are kicking off in the next few weeks. And we're going to carry through for the next year at sort of every level of the system down into the classroom, because really the lesson of 173 is if you want to tackle special education and the rising costs of special education, you've got to actually start in the classroom and improving what we call tier 1 instruction, so the general ed classroom instruction that you receive every day. So that's going to be a major area of focus for us.
Okay.
All right. We've already talked about, I'm sorry.
Let's skip that one.
Okay, so we've already talked about the reorganization. You can see the general structure. The key drivers in our budget. So Sean, I'm actually going to let you do this.
Yeah, I
This
don't
is the
do that.
numbers. All right. I mean, it's been a minute since we've done this. We had our show down for a while.
Right.
And then I think I get slide 14 and then pop out.
So our 27 budget request is for 2.73 billion, sorry. And that request that represents an increase of 102 million. The majority of that, or more than that, is the statewide ed spending grant. And then we have some reductions in our federal funds, more COVID fund reductions there. And then you'll see a $17.4 million reduction in our grants for the Medicaid program that's shifting to AHS, along with other language that's happening this legislative session. And then our personnel and contracts and operating costs, or our operations budget for the agency is 42.3 million this year. A small increase of 1.1. The key drivers there, we have actually a decrease in some contracts. Again, more pandemic funding expiring, and then we're refocusing our resources some. And then our personnel costs, we have 10% increase in healthcare, and some back office increases that happen every year, the insurance, single audit, and the cost for vision, HR, and ADS services. This one's yours.
Okay, so we can do this very briefly because you've actually heard from us on this several times now. So we only had 2 new requests in our budget this year. So the first was taking those 8-month limited service positions and making them permanent. So that is that one, and so putting them into the base permanently. And then the second one is for the literacy reversion and reappropriation. And again, reminder, these were originally federal funds under ARPA SFRF. They were turned in through AOA administrative action into general fund. And now we are asking for them to be reverted and reappropriated so that we can utilize them, because our IT contracts are coming in under budget. It's actually why we have the funds available. It's a miracle of miracles. And so we'd like to be able to use them for literacy instruction.
Okay, great.
Simple budget requests. All right, and then Sean, go ahead and speak to this.
So you'll notice in the House budget, we've combined 2 appropriations, the 2 appropriations that covered our operations activities, so finance and admin, and then ed services. So we've combined those into one appropriation this year in a request, and you'll see it that way in the House version of the budget. So we're looking to gain some efficiencies in the business office, and it more aligns with how our new structure in the agency after our reorg last fall.
Okay.
So traditionally there was sort of like a finance and admin side, and then we always called program was the other side, but our new organizational structure is academics, operations, which includes things like safe and healthy schools, child nutrition, which are largely programmatic, quote unquote, in nature, plus finance, DMAD, other areas, and then our strategy and accountability. So one appropriation made a lot more sense. And the other aspect of it was in light of the federal uncertainty that we experienced last spring, we found that being able to be more nimble was going to be really, really important because we don't anticipate that would be settling down very soon. We are always able to provide almost any level of detail that you're interested in terms of transparency of reporting. We have layers and layers and layers of drill down that Sean and team are able to provide. So it's not a less transparent system, it's just more nimble and efficient.
Okay.
All right, and these are some of the numbers. So all of our appropriations, and it's broken out by spending category, personal services, operating, and grants, and we're comparing last year's budget to this year's request. And you'll see the increases that totals of 102 million that we looked at before. And then looking just at general fund, personal services, operating, grants, and then our general fund grants broken out. See the changes here. Not a whole lot to talk about there, just normal increases.
Is there a reason that flexible pathways, there was no increase? Is that just declining students?
That's a portion of dual enrollment. It's half of the dual enrollment cost, and we've been able to live with it. It's that times two. So general fund half of it, general funds the other, and we live within that. So the count of students in dual enrollment hasn't gone over that.
Okay.
If we can get more kids in dual enrollment, that we would increase that appropriation,
Okay.
which is a goal.
These are the other funds, special funds, federal and interdepartmental transfers. And here we're seeing a reduction in our contracts and personal services at the federal fund. And then the grant reduction is federal funds and the special for the Medicaid 17.4 million moving to AHS shows up.
I just skipped to slide 24. Just stick with the numbers.
Sure.
For the amount of time we have.
And this looks at just our operations budget. So education services appropriations is the newly combined appropriation. And we're seeing a reduction of 21.3 million. Again, that's mainly the Medicaid special fund moving to AHS. A little more detailed on the grants or the source of funds.
And the federal funds,
Yes.
4.7.
They're still pulling out spending authority from the pandemic era money. So each year we just release that more and more. Probably won't have any next year.
We'll be done, Sean. Sean just submitted the last of our pandemic era fund reimbursements an hour ago.
Yeah. And then positions, we've got 180.1 in our ed services appropriation. We have a 2.9 in the after school appropriation, making a total of 183. And we're seeing the funding, how our positions are funded. One thing you'll see in the House bill is they've shifted our Medicaid spending authority from, they're gonna move that all to AHS, and in return we're getting general fund. So if that passes this year, we won't have a Medicaid fund. And so the 18.38 will go over to general fund.
On your positions, how many vacant positions do you have these days?
Right now, we've seen an uptick, and it's been largely due to the hybrid work standard. So
An uptick in vacancies?
yeah. So in January, I think we had 18, and that included the 5 limited service positions. So that was a really low number of vacancies. That was very normal turnover. I think the last time I checked, we were just about 30. And some of that is also, as folks have retired, we're actually reevaluating the position, and then we have to move through the HR process. I would say HR has some pretty significant
Don't
backlogs.
say anything bad about HR.
So I would say there, I mean, another department that's probably under-resourced and understaffed. So I think they've got some pretty significant backlogs right now, which is delaying.
So you're up over 20% or so, but you're hoping to.
Yeah, I mean, it is an all hands on deck to get those positions posted. I would say what I find encouraging is that we're actually seeing large numbers of candidates, and the quality of the candidates has really significantly increased. You know, we might be benefiting from what's happening at the federal level, to be honest. But we're seeing almost every position, you know, well over a dozen very highly qualified candidates. So that's really encouraging. And we are starting to see more folks from the field actually applying for to work at the agency, which is also encouraging because we're not particularly competitive with MK wise.
Just wondering, of the candidates that you're seeing in this little mini search, are they out-of-state, primarily, or?
It's a mix, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say last year we saw a lot of out-of-state candidates who were being laid off from various federal positions.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I would say at this point it's more mixed, but we always have quite a few number of federal or out-of-state candidates, and we're very clear with them that the expectation is that they move to Vermont, and then we all cross our fingers and hope they have housing. So yeah, we have more vacancies than I feel particularly comfortable with at the moment, but we are, I mean, I think every team has some candidates they're working to bring on board. I'm doing that.
Okay. Maybe move to slide 29. Yeah.
We just wanted to show off all of the grants that we manage.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
some
no,
of
I
the
saw that,
first legs. Yeah. 91, yeah.
So this is our ed fund, comparing last year's budget to this year's, showing the increases in our personal services, operating, and all the grants under the education fund. I think in the House budget, they dropped the education grant by about 30 million based on the budgets and how they came in versus.
Because they're going to send it somewhere else, or because of the federal grant?
No, from local budgets that were passed. So it's they're
grant
coming in
to
lower.
them,
Yeah.
This 2.1 billion was based on the estimates around early December.
Right.
So now that more time has passed and we've received preliminary budgets, they could drop that number.
And senators, I apologize, I'm
You said you were going to go.
clock striking midnight for me. So thank you all so much. If you have any additional questions, please let Sean know and we will be responsive to them. As I said, we sent you over a ton of material, so as you're looking through it, just let us know if you have any questions. And thank you for the time.
Thank you. So the universal meals continues to drop in cost. Is that a trend you're expecting to see more of?
I think it's probably right sizing, to where we were estimating a need, and we have a very small decrease this year, or I think in the budget adjustment, we dropped it $1 million.
Right.
So,
Well, when it was passed, a former member of this committee, Senator Stars always thought once we got it up and running, it would be much lower numbers.
okay.
Seems to slowly heading towards his number. We haven't quite got there.
Nice.
And we never will. He was, toward the end, he was saying it was a pittance.
Yeah. He was a big supporter of that.
Bobby always had a deal.
And transportation goes up just because of,
That one, yeah, we grow with inflation.
It's
I
inflation
think the
cost.
statute,
and this is the grant out to schools at the 50% of their cost.
yeah, and I think we're paying, around 44%. So, the growth of that fund is not.
What do you mean you're not paying 50%? Isn't it a categorical grant of 50%?
Yes,
So
yeah.
you don't pay the full 50%?
No, we reduce it down to the appropriation.
So if you don't, you don't fund the 50%. It's based on available funds. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a maximum of 50%.
Right. So we collect their allowable transportation. So, we calculate 50%, and it's for as long as I know, it's been more than our appropriations, so we reduce it down.
And does your appropriations specify what the transportation portion of is, or you guys decide how to allocate that within the overall education budget?
How much we,
Like, we don't say you shall use this much money for transportation, I assume we don't do that. So
it's its own appropriation, so yeah.
within
With
the agency, so
No, I mean.
you have a line item,
It's,
but we could change that line item,
you could.
Right.
Yeah.
just don't remember ever having that conversation. Okay. Cause yeah, Senator Watson and I have some people that are very unhappy with their bus service. In fact, because they don't have a bus service.
Oh.
But they used to have a school bus, now they don't have a school bus on one whole road, they just said, we're not gonna take the school bus down that road anymore. And cost cutting was one of the
You're
reasons.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Is it because of the condition of the road or the?
No, it was, I think it's a combination of costs and the bus company saying, I don't know if it was staffing, I haven't looked into it, but I think they were given costs and just that's what their contracted bus company said, they couldn't do that route anymore, so they just cut a whole route.
Oh, so it's not one road, they got a whole
They
route.
cut the whole route,
Oh.
but the other roads got picked up, like they had 3 routes, they switched to 2, but maybe more than one route, but the people on that road were just
Really?
Oh, look.
out of luck, yeah.
Wow.
But I assume it's, well, I guess if it's always been under, you haven't been paid 50%, they're not expecting 50%.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the end of our.
Yeah, that's of the big numbers, yeah. Any other questions?
Well, I'm just noting that universal school meals has come down by like 8 million.
Yeah, and $1.2 million in the last year.
I think it was, the first number was 29 million,
It was high. Yeah.
so it's come down 11 million from that estimate.
Okay, well, we'll look through the other information and get more information about what the House did, and if we have questions, we know where to find you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. We can go on mute while we We're off mute.
Okay.
Welcome, Commissioner.
Sorry, we were going through our Gen Z slang.
Yeah, they didn't get to hear any of that. We are on mute.
Oh, man, you missed the best part.
They missed the best part, yeah. So Commissioner, we will let you introduce yourself and members of your team and give us your presentation. Can you hear us?
We can. Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You bet. Hi. For the record, my name is Lindsay.
Name was what?
Lindsay?
Last name.
Oh,
Are you having problems?
Yeah,
seeing or hearing?
I'm hearing myself back like 20
Oh.
seconds later.
Oh,
That's annoying.
It's not-
We don't think it's our side, but everything seems fine over here.
There's no echo over
Okay.
here.
I'm going to log out and log back in.
Okay, good luck. Do the other members of ACCD want to just introduce themselves so we can do that while we're waiting for the commissioner?
Well, we can jump right in. Lyle Jepson, Commissioner for Economic Development. I'll pass it over to Heather.
Good afternoon, Heather Palma, Commissioner, Department of Tourism and Marketing. And I can see Dan next.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dan Dickerson, Director of Administrative Services for ACCD.
You're welcome.
Nate Formulari, Deputy Commissioner for Department of Housing and Community Development, sitting in for Alex Farrell today, the Commissioner.
Welcome, Nate. Okay, how's it now, Secretary Farrell?
I think it was user error. I had a window open from the YouTube live stream from earlier, so it was my own bad. Thank you. I've canceled that out. So, hi everyone. For the record, my name is Lindsay Curley. I am the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to present our agency's FY27 budget and talk a little bit about our priority requests. Before I get into details, I want to briefly describe what we do because it ties directly to why these investments matter. At the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, our job is to make Vermont a place where people can live, work, and stay. In practical terms, that means we help businesses start, grow, we help them find workers, we help communities build housing and strengthen their downtowns, and we promote Vermont as a place to visit and ultimately to call home. We do this across all 14 counties with a team of about 100 people who work every day with employers, municipalities, and families to connect economic growth with housing and community vitality. At its core, our work is about affordability. If we don't grow the economy and increase our housing supply, we won't solve that challenge. I also want to acknowledge the committee's work and the full Senate's work this week on advancing land use and housing legislation. We really do appreciate the thoughtful debate and the progress that's been made, and we look forward to remaining committed partners in getting things right for Vermonters. As you make budget decisions, I want to be clear about what our team considers essential. The House version of the budget included 3 targeted investments that are critical to maintaining momentum on housing and economic growth. First, $4 million in base funding for the Vermont Housing Improvement Program, or VHIP. VHIP helps bring housing units online and into the market by supporting landlords to repair or rehabilitate or construct units to make them available to Vermonters. It's one of the most efficient and economical ways we can increase our housing supply. And more supply is directly tied to improving affordability. Second, $800,000 in one-time funding for the Manufactured Housing Improvement Repair Program, or MER. We love our acronyms. MER is about preservation. It provides grants to homeowners who can't afford to make critical repairs like roofing, heating systems, structural fixes, so they can stay housed. and it helps ensure that we don't lose housing while we're trying to build more. And third, $150,000 in one-time funding for our international office contract, which is through this contract, Vermont has on-the-ground representation in key international markets, which is something our small businesses cannot replicate on their own. The team works with our team to connect Vermont companies with buyers and distributors, helping them navigate foreign markets and build long-term relationships that are needed to succeed internationally. They also identify and cultivate relationships with companies abroad that are looking to establish a presence in the United States, helping us to recruit and new employers who will bring investment into Vermont. So the result is new revenue coming into the state, stronger businesses, job creation, and a more diversified economy, all again, which support long-term affordability. So I just wanted to make a strong ask that the committee consider to carry these forward into the Senate's version of the budget as well. These are not new ideas. These are proven tools that are delivering results. And if we pull them back now, it would really slow progress at the exact moment when Vermonters are expecting us to move faster on housing and affordability. As you can see, I'm joined today by our commissioners and a deputy commissioner and our director of administrative services, Dan Dickerson, who is going to take you through the agency's budget now. And I'll stay on the line for further questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee. I guess before I dive into the weeds and put you all to sleep, I guess I would pose the question to you of whether you would like to, whether you prefer to hear from the commissioners that are requesting either base or one-time funding and dive into the specifics of those, or if you'd like to just get an overview of the agency, which I can provide. Either way is fine. But I didn't want to immediately start going down a rabbit hole and then have you pull me out.
I mean, you can go through the slides. We don't need an overview of the agency. So if you want to stick to the numbers and slides, that's
okay. You have the slides in front of you?
And why don't you go through what you and what we went through before? I don't think they need the whole load of hay.
Okay, understood. So there is a slide deck we had provided to the House. Hopefully you all have access. I can try to share my screen, although I'm not sure that I have the privileges, but if you have it in front of you, I can just walk through. So within ACCD, we're made up of 4 departments, the Department of Administration, Driven Marketing, Economic Development, and then Housing Community Development. And as Secretary Curley noted, as far as our base budget, there are no real big requests other than, well, I guess one significant request, which is the $4 million for the Vermont Housing Improvement Program. Just to give a little more detail, what we would intend to do with that is grant out $3.75 million. And then the remaining $250,000 would cover our administration, and we intend to go to the position pool for 2 positions to support that program. Once the budget is signed into law. That's really all we have in our base budget as far as new funding requests. And then once again, as noted on the one-time side, there is the $150,000 to support our in-market representation in Montreal, focusing on the Canadian market, and then $800,000 for MER. One clarification I want to point out on the MER funding is that this is not, it's not a new expenditure or appropriation request. We are repurposing some money that was previously appropriated to us through the emergency board back in 2023 after the flooding. We received funding to support manufactured housing owners that had had their home flooded and was condemned and needed to have it removed from the property. But we had some leftover funding from that, about 830,000 that we've offered back as a reversion, of which 800 would come back to us for MER, which we think we can readily get out the door. So we've basically that's a net neutral request. So in total, on the all funds side, we're looking at about 75 million of expenditure for the agency. This is on slide 7 of the slide deck if you're following along. One new piece here that I'll just call out, especially for Senator Westman as he's on Senate Transportation, is in statute, we are directed to receive transportation revenues from a fee that's charged to EV owners, as well as I think portions of a fee that's charged to owners of hybrid vehicles. And those are intended to be used for EV build out at housing complexes. So we've had an ongoing partnership with AOT where they've essentially been appropriated the funds, and then we execute an MOU to then receive them and spend them. This year, we're doing it a little bit differently to cut out a little bit of the overhead, which is we're asking for a direct appropriation of transportation fund to support the program. So that way, it cuts out a little bit of the paperwork that's needed between the two agencies, and allows us to receive the funds directly and move them a little bit quicker. So you will see that in some of your documentation as a new transportation fund appropriation. And I just wanted to call that out as something that's somewhat new, although it's an ongoing initiative. Hopefully I explained that clearly, but
Dan, sometimes it's hard to hear you. Your mic sometimes gets picked up and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
So Dan, we're talking about the surcharge on the registration in transportation now. I think the Transportation Committee will need to understand where the Commerce Agency is and the grants you've got out and the structure of what the House has been trying to do with vehicle miles traveled. And so I'm going to have to come back around and talk to you about that.
Okay, understood.
And would Bronwyn still be the person to come in and talk, or would it be you, Dan?
I think he would be the most appropriate to discuss the programmatic angle of EVSC, but I'm happy to provide support, or I can stay offline and just if she has questions for me, but I think Bronwyn's the best person to have in.
Megan, the staff assistant in transportation, will get a hold of you and to get you and her into transportation to talk to us about this.
Okay. Beyond that, as far as the numbers, I don't think there's a whole lot of additional detail that's really changing year to year. The only other piece that I'll walk through is within DHCD, you may notice a large increase in federal funding, and that's just due to the recent award that we received of the Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery dollars, which was 67 million, where we should have a majority of that funding obligated before the end of the current fiscal year, but we anticipate that there's going to be some residual that will get that will need to be obligated in FY27. And so we are requesting spending authority for those dollars in 27 to the tune of about 19 million. And then what will be an ongoing cost, although much smaller, of probably about 300,000 to 400,000 a year is just we have 2 positions dedicated to administering those CDBG DR grants, and those individuals will be with us for several years. So that spending authority will stay in our budget going forward, but there will be this sort of one-time piece that of about 19 million that we hope to have obligated, and then it would fall back out of the budget in FY28. So hopefully that made sense, but happy to answer questions. Beyond that, sorry, what was that?
Go ahead, you can continue with what you're going to say.
And that's, you would see that in slide 24, we have an ups and downs document for DHCD. Other than that, I know you wanted to give us to give the quick overview, so I don't think there's a whole lot of other specifics that I would.
Do you
unless you have questions?
Yeah, sometimes your mic still cuts out, but I do have some questions. One was just why you decided to cancel your Duns and Bradstreet. It's not a lot of money, but I just wondered, was that just a cost savings, or were they not providing the day you just weren't using that membership?
So that contract was held by the Department of Labor, and we were splitting the cost 50-50. And the Department of Labor opted to not renew the contract. And instead, what they worked out with us is if we need information, they thought that I think it's the Labor Market Analysis Division, they thought that their team there, Matt Barowitz and his folks, could help us work through the data needs. And then if there was a cost component, if DOL thought they needed to be reimbursed, then we do have some money in our budget to reimburse them, but they didn't think the Dun and Bradstreet contract was necessary. And so we were dropping the costs due to that cancellation by DOL.
Okay. On the international business development, Secretary Curley had mentioned key international markets. Is it just, I always thought of it as Canada, but what other efforts are being made, or what other markets?
We work as businesses need to be in other global markets. We do work in those areas. Lyle might have more to add other than that, but to your point, it is largely used for our relationship with SIDEP, which is the contractor in Montreal. But there, like I said, there are times where businesses specifically need navigation services beyond that market.
What SIDEC, what is the cost of that contract versus the rest in the 150?
Would you like me to jump in here, Lindsay?
That would be great, yeah, because
Sure. Yeah. So primarily that funding is for a contract. We're going to need to go out to bid on that again. Our focus has been Canada. That is a market that it's our #1 trading partner, and we want to continue to do that. So what you're looking at at $150,000 would be a renewal for actually 2 years of a SIDEP type contract, but we will need to go out to bid on that. As far as what Lindsay was describing earlier, we certainly don't ignore other markets, and we'll be entertaining some Taiwanese folks on Tuesday. As you may know, the Japanese were here this week. So we certainly are reaching out to other markets, and we do have some international money built into the regular budget that we are able to then go to specific events if they will benefit Vermont. And so we don't go to lots of overseas events, but we do go to several.
The present contract with the subcontractor in Montreal is how much?
Right now, the current contract's about $75,000 a year. The reason you're seeing $150,000 is we like to maintain a contract over 2 years, which is the process that we have followed in the past. It provides continuity and relationship building. Will it be the SIDEP group, which is, specifically one organization? We don't know yet because of bidding requirements, we'll need to go out to bid.
Okay. Lyle, I have another question for you. The CHIP program, I wondered if you could give us an update in that program where I think it just started last year. I just haven't heard much about it recently. Like, has it been successful? Things like that.
So you said CHIP?
CHIP, yeah.
Yep. So we are expecting to have robust applications for that. There are pre-applications that are coming in right now. It's been a little bit slower than we expected because of town meeting, and now the towns are beginning to pay very close attention to that. All the webinars for CHIP had more than 200 people attending. And so we very much expect that there'll be robust use of that program. We are working with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. They received a $500,000 NBRC grant that will be technical support for the municipalities and helping them get to go or get to yes on submitting an application.
That's a competitive program.
It will be competitive. There's $200 million available per year over a 10-year period of time. It is a significant infrastructure program for which we thank you very much. It is the beginning of what we hope will be significant housing development.
But it hasn't, so no money has gone out yet. You're building it all up and doing the trainings and the webinars and getting people ready to apply.
That's correct. And it's really not money going out. We would love to have someone from the VEPC team come and talk to you about how that process works. It is very much like a TIF, only it's a very small one per community.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
Do you have any data or information about the effect that are where, I don't even know where the tariffs are right now at the federal level, but what effect are they having on our relationships, international relationships, if any?
Well, it has not benefited our relationship with Canada, certainly. And that is why we really would like to maintain our contract with staying in close contact with them. There are definitely examples of particularly around steel. And there is a project that I know very well in Rutland that has had an increase in their cost of their construction by more than $1 million just because of steel tariffs. So we were very fortunate. Tim Tierney, our international trades person, received a congressionally directed spending a grant of $250,000. We are going to begin to roll out webinars and information to the business community around the state so that they have the most up-to-date information available. You're going to hear that the federal government says yes, because of the Supreme Court ruling, the money is now going to go back. I'm not holding my breath right now as to how quickly that may or may not happen, but we're going to stay on top of that so that the folks that did pay higher prices may get some money back.
Thank you.
Will individuals get money back? We don't know. So, because at the end of the day, we all paid the tariffs.
Yes, you're right.
I'm not holding my breath. The VHIP positions, remember that was something I think you requested last year in the budget, maybe 2 years ago. Is that part of the 4 million or that's separate? That you mentioned going to the pool for those positions, but can you just talk me through the positions for the VHIP again?
Yeah, the cost for the 2 positions is included in the 4 million total request. And so we estimated the cost would be about 250,000 of that total 4 million, and then the rest we would provide as grants. We do intend to go to the pool for those 2 positions after the budget is signed into law. We have folks in a limited service capacity covering the program now. So I think anticipation is those folks would have an opportunity to potentially fill permanent positions going forward.
It's not two new positions, it's kind of, you're creating two positions, and the two limited service positions will be eliminated?
Yeah, those would expire.
Yeah. So you run the program with the two staff?
Currently, yes.
Okay. I had a question on tourism, the GROW program. There's a slide on this. I wondered if you could just, I didn't know, maybe I did know about this, but what's the budget part of the GROW program? Or is it just kind of built into the other programs?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that question. Thank you. So the GROW program, that stands for Grants for Relocation and Outreach Work. This is our program to help support communities as we're looking to welcome new residents to the state. So it's basically a grant program where we are providing capacity funding to local organizations to provide that one-on-one level concierge type service to folks who have raised their hands and say they're interested in moving to Vermont. It's a program that really looks at helping folks make that jump to move here, and then also to make sure that they feel welcome. So there's both a recruitment and a retention part of those programs. And so we grant that out there are now 15 organizations throughout the state who receive that funding from us. We're in the second 2-year cycle of that grant. It's been hugely impactful for the folks who are doing that work on the ground. And this is the strategy that we have found over the years as we've kind of looked to, how can we reverse the demographic trend that we see and encourage more people to move here, that this level of service is really what helps make the difference between somebody deciding that they might just think about moving to Vermont and actually doing so.
What's the total budget? Like, what's an example of like a grant amount and like a grantee? Is it like the Rutland Regional Chamber kind of thing, and how much money?
Yeah, the maximum grant that we provide is $75,000 a year. So we do it in 2-year cycles. So the maximum grant is $150,000 that we would offer. And really, that's meant to acknowledge the fact that this is time-intensive work. And so the hope is that that covers the equivalent of about an FTE, or at least as much of that as possible, so that we are able, in the past, organizations like, the Rutland organization that you mentioned, were doing this really on their own time, sort of a bit of a volunteer basis for us. So by having this grant, we now have a contractual relationship with them. So we're able to get much more robust reporting on the activities that they are conducting. Are they connecting potential residents with employers? What kind of events they're having? What sectors are they coming from? And so forth. So we have a much more in-depth look at how the effectiveness of that money is in these local communities.
So what's the total budget? It's over $1 million if you have 15 of these?
It's $1 million. That's part of our base funding for talent attraction period. So it's about 700,000 that's within the grants. And then the additional is for paid marketing and other support to make sure that Vermont is top of mind as people are thinking about places that they might want to relocate.
Do you feel like the 15 is what you have all the regions covered, or are you still trying to recruit other?
We do now have all the regions covered. In the first 2-year cycle, we did have a few holes, but we were just able to bring on Lamoille, Franklin, and Grand Isle, which were the previous holes. We also have one of our grants is to Vermont Professionals of Color Network, and now we also have a grant to Out in the Open. So we're able to provide specialized services for folks who identify as LGBTQ+ or BIPOC who might want to speak to somebody about those issues in particular, in addition to somebody in a specific region.
Okay, thank you. And I had a question about S327, the Economic Development Bill that we just passed. There was money that committee, particularly the chair, keeps bending my ear about brownfields, and that there was no money in the governor's recommendation, and they wanted another $3 million. I'm not trying to put you in a weird position in relation to the governor's proposal, but is there like existing money in there? Like, I assume you're still working on brownfields? I just don't know if you could say anything about what the current situation is with the brownfields program, because there was some concern that by not funding it, we were killing the programs.
Lindsay, you want me to take that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to have you take it. You bet.
You could say what you just said over again if you wanted to say that. All of the housing developments, as you are aware, not all, many housing developments start with the dirt, and there is a lot of dirty dirt out there. Right now, there is a big question out there, and you are grappling with it every day, and that's the cost of education. And so I think that as we look at how we spend money system-wide, if there is a way for us to get more brownfields money in the future, that would be great. But in this current year, as you know, it is a very tight year. And so we have foregone a request. Certainly it's up to folks like you if you want to put money into that.
And are you working on programs now, like from past appropriations?
Absolutely.
You have projects in the pipeline. You're not doing any new grants, but you're working on projects.
Yeah, we do not have funding for new grants. We've sent in a congressionally directed spending request to Senator Welch's office to see if we can get some brownfields money through that process. So we are actively reaching out for other pools of money because we recognize, as you do, how important the brownfields program is. If this is merely a temporary pause, okay, but we will need to come back in the future at some point and talk about brownfields again.
So the staff that work on that program have enough work to do for this next year without a new appropriation?
Absolutely.
And will we know about any chance of success with Senator Welch's office?
If we were so lucky to get that, I don't expect there would be funding until fall.
Yeah, I think ideally you find out in the late spring, early summer, and then maybe don't know if you really kind of get the money in the fall.
Correct.
Okay.
And just for folks, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I was going to say for awareness, like for projects that might be funded through the CHIP program, the infrastructure money, as I understand it, can also be used for, cleaning up dirt as well. So we have a little bit, like you said, that's still in the pipeline. Hopefully at some point the federal funding will come back to us as well. And we hope that, projects will keep moving forward in the interim. But as Lyle laid it out so perfectly, I won't reiterate. We have to make some tough choices right now.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I think everything else is pretty straightforward that I saw. If we look through the materials and have any other questions, we'll track you down. Unless you have any other last questions for the committee or final comments from the secretary.
No, I'm fine. We haven't heard from the deputy commissioner at all. So Nate, I didn't know if there's anything you wanted to add. Largely, obviously the 4 million falls within his department. So just Nate, in case there's anything you want to add, please.
Dan did a great job. Only thing I would add is that current funds, obviously federal funds, and then a couple tranches of one-time state money has all been obligated. So that program is coming to an end with its money at this point.
That was ARPA money or some other money?
It started as ARPA money, and then you folks have funded it with state funds and a few one-time allocations, the most recent of which was last year. And those funds are allocated at this point, or obligated, I should say. It is a reimbursement program, so it takes it a little while to the money to actually go.
And anyway, real quick on the VHIP, do you have from other applications a wait list, or like if there's new funding, you would kind of put out a new solicitation, or is it just kind of a rolling basis?
It is rolling, and it's, regionally, the program sees more demand in certain regions than others. So some regions may have a wait list right now, others may not at this point, but it is a rolling application throughout the year.
And you allocated it by region?
Correct.
And is that by population, county or something?
It is through the home ownership centers in each region. So, Rural Edge, Cornerstone Partners, Downstreet Housing, each get equal splits.
They get equal splits regardless of their population coverage?
I believe
Mhm.
so. I can also double check that, or Dan, if you have.
I
don't
don't,
know.
I don't think it's equal. I think the homeownership centers within regions that have heavier populations tend to get more, and then the lower population regions tend to get less. So it's, I think there is some proportionality based on population.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, thank you. That's all the information we need, unless you have something else to say.
No, thank you so very much for your time.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Is there any announcements from the